Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on exploring the fascinating world of near-death experiences, communication with spirit, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and listening to Magic is Real, or watching Magic is Real, as the case may be. I'm Shannon Torrance, and I'm your host. And today I have Philip Siracusa on the show, and I'm very happy to have him here. Philip is an author, a speaker, a paranormal investigator, and a near-death experiencer. So welcome so much. Can I call you Phil?
Sure.
I'm going to call you Phil. I just feel like that's a friendlier. So Phil, how are you today? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. Was looking forward to this.
Too.
I like what you do, and let's see where this brings us.
Thank you. I know. And I also love your energy because I grew up in Connecticut. My mom's from Long Island. I have a very sort of New York, my uncle and cousin are from New Paltz. And so I have a very strong connection with the New York area, even though I spent most of my life in LA and now I'm back in Virginia. So I just feel like I know you already. So what I would like to do is, I know that
Well, it's
you
funny
had,
you said that
yeah.
because my parents had a house in Accord, New York. So you had to go through
Oh,
New Paltz. I know New Paltz really good.
I love it there. I
To go
love
up
it.
the
I might,
mountain.
it's
Yeah.
on my list of places I might want to go one day to live. It's beautiful. So I know that you had a near-death experience when you were 14 years old. And
Yes.
just before we launch into that, just wanted to know, as a child, what was your awareness of religion, spirituality? What was your upbringing like in that sense?
So I grew up in Staten Island, New York, in a family of 8. Ranch home, 1 bathroom, if you can imagine at the time. Born in the '60s. And I had suppressed memories of a past life through adolescence. And it was always one of these things that always haunted me, trying to understand it, because back in the '70s, you really can't talk to your parents about, hey, I think I've been around before. And my
Mhm.
suppressed memories were, I remembered being around a campfire and there was an explosion. I was with a few people and that was it. It was over. And then I was pulled into a light of a beautiful light, and then I remember being pulled into a complete darkness. That darkness, I would say, what people believe or they don't, I would call it hell. Um, why I was pulled there in a suppressed memory from what I would believe would be heaven to hell. And I do remember I could describe these things. I'll do it later on the show to a T. But I do remember also the pain, the torture I was going through. And this place, I believe, was called hell. And I just kept praying through my mind, through a form of telepathy, to please get me out of here. Help me, God, help me. And I remember a crack of light came slower and closer to this. I'm inside of this lookalike volcano, and the pinhole of light where there's no time or distance, but it did look like it was hundreds of miles away. And I just wanted it to consume me, and it did. And when I was being consumed, I remember taking back all the emotions of love, caring, the person, the character, the true essence of a soul, and leaving that hatred and pain and that torture. And then I opened my eyes right after that on September 16th, 1967. I was born in Staten Island University Hospital. And I remembered this. And then through adolescence, I remember also having these visitations from shadows and evil looking figures in the window. And I would scream and cry to my parents, wake up, and I would get in trouble, get some bad nightmare, go back to bed. That's where it started. my journey of Phil Siracusa and a past, having a suppressed memory. I can't prove it to anybody. But as I go along in the story of my life in the Horsefly Chronicles, uh, what I talk about in my books, it comes to life.
Yeah, and I think that's very common. What I find is that people who have had near-death experiences, there was a precursor to it. There was sort of a path where they already had glimpses that there was something else going on for them, and that for whatever reason, in this life, they were going to experience some otherworldly events that not all of us have the opportunity to experience. And so, why don't we go to the day of your near-death experience and just tell us what happened?
So in 1981, I remember my mom taking me to the dentist. It was a routine visit. Um, they were giving me sweet air and doing the cleaning because one thing I don't like is the dentist.
Mhm.
And I felt myself getting numb, and I was complaining about the pain when they were working on my teeth. And then they gave me more nitrous oxide. They turned it up, and then I remembered floating out of my body, going upward. And I remember looking down from the ceiling, and I see the dentist, the assistant. I see my mom sitting in a chair, and I'm saying, hello, hello. And all of a sudden, I pull through the ceiling, and it's as if now I'm floating. And then I get pulled into this vortex, this tunnel of energy, way, way, way up in the sky. And as I enter it, I'm pulled like I'm going through a vacuum cleaner hose, very, very fast, very fast. And I feel this vibrational wind coming through. And I'm just going, and then I start to hear halfway in the tunnel, I start to hear melodies, not singing, but melodies. And the melodies were soothing to the vibration of myself, of who I was. And then I remember getting pulled more, and there's turns in this tunnel. There were turns, it was very windy, and it kept going and going, and it was very, very fast. And then comes a complete stop. And when I stopped, I'm at the end, and all of a sudden, a tremendous light opens up to a bliss, crystal blue sky. And now I'm floating very slowly. I call it drifting now at this point. And I'm being somehow pulled to the right. And all of a sudden, I see these gates. The gates, I really can't describe the size of them. Um, Miles high and wide, and these tremendous gates and an incredible scenery. But you see, what was happening to me was there was no pain. And through a consciousness of me, I felt like I was home. And I remember now I'm drifting and I'm in a field. So I didn't go through the gates. I'm in a field, and the grass is one of the things today that I still remember. Gives me goosebumps. The grass was beyond perfection, and in some sort of sense, it had life to it. Each blade of grass was perfect. Each blade of grass, you can feel the energy from. And I'm floating above it, drifting above the grass, taking it all in, the pureness of nature, the pureness of everything. As I'm doing that, going through this field, and the field is just keeps going on and on and on. And there's no time, so I really can't say, like on the spirit end, how long I would have these experiences for at the other side. But people ask me today, is heaven real? The answer is yes. Do I have any firm belief in any religion, whether it's Christianity or Catholic. No, this was an experience that I can tell it's real. Um, Not reading it was real, experiencing what I'm going through. The trees were immense. There was an ocean, a body of water. The body of water, people were just having fun playing and jumping up and down. And it's as if this was like a homecoming. Now, no one at this point had greeted me. There was just a thousandfold of what we would experience. The best day here on life is 1,000 times greater on the other side. And that's pretty much like, maybe I'm probably shortchanging what I'm saying on the other side, because when you're talking about bliss, perfection, harmony, and peace, it's everything about who I was. It was the pureness of my soul. And now everything back in the physical world, in that dentist office, it was over. This was not a remembering of where I came from. That was gone. It's as if I slipped out of a shell and I'm home. Through this veil, I'm home again. And I just kept saying to myself through my mind, I'm home. I'm home. And there was this angelic being as I'm going through these immense fields and I'm looking at this body of water in the distance. She had long blonde hair, crystal blue eyes. She must have been around 8 or 9 years old. And she was coming towards me from the far right of the field, like slowly drifting towards me. And she somehow through the mind takes me, she's pulling me through some kind of mental vibration through consciousness. She's pulling me through the field. And when she's pulling me, I see on a bench my grandmother and my grandfather. Now, my grandmother died earlier that year, and my grandfather I never met because he was deceased before I was born. But I knew him, and I just knew him somehow. And I said, Grandpa. And he said, Sonny. And I was so happy to see him, and he knew who I was. And then I looked at my grandma, and I go, Grandma. And then he turns around and looks at her, and she points her finger at me. And I was so happy to see her, but she didn't look happy to see me. And she says, go back now. And I says, Grandma, like through the mind now, this is all through telepathy. And all of a sudden, I'm being pulled backwards into this tunnel, and I'm going very fast backwards. And I remember through my consciousness and my thoughts, I don't want to go back, meaning home. I want to stay with my grandmother, because I started to come back of when I'm in that tunnel going halfway through now, I'm starting to think, wait a second, where I came from, a dentist chair, I was in pain. And I kept saying, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. And I stopped in the middle of the tunnel, complete darkness. So when I say tunnel, it's the best explanation how I can really describe this immense thing. It was huge. I was the only one in it. It was dark. And at this point, I was worried because I was at a complete stop. I felt null and void, and I felt like I would never, ever be found. And I kept thinking through the consciousness, I want to go back, meaning to heaven. I want to go back to the grandparents because it's beyond perfection. And I'm slowly through my mind now, the way this angelic being was able to pull me to my grandparents, I'm pulling myself now through a mental vibration back to heaven. And I remember coming to the end of the tunnel, and all of a sudden, I'm being pulled backwards so fast that I can't control my own thoughts at this point. And then I remember levitating over a hospital, looking at my body. And, you know, this was an out of body experience. This was a near death experience. And I know that it's hard to believe, and I still have a hard time with this. Going through this and coming back And just looking at my body, I could promise the listener, before I go further, that we don't die. We call it death, the physical part of us, yes, but not the true essence of who we really are. And I remember I don't want to go back into that body. I don't want to go back. And then somehow when the other side says you're going back, you're going back. And I was slipped in like a glove. And then I'm just grabbing my face and screaming because I don't know what happened to me. And I see my mom and I'm trying to fight out of this. Like I'm in a state of sleep paralysis at this point. I'm trying to fight out of it. Wake up, wake up. And I come to, and then I drop out again. And then I come to, and I remember there was like an IV in me. Um, it was a dream. Was it hallucination? Or was this real? Was I really in a place that I would say is home, which is heaven? And I had a hard time explaining this to people, especially now. This is 1981. You know, today it's more, people listen more, but back then, you know, when I was talking about this, it's a dream. The medication made you hallucinate. That's what I was getting back. And I could tell you that, but beyond the shadow of a doubt, and when I get further into my near-death experience, it's going to be a mind blower for you. It's real. It's just one man's word, but there's hundreds of thousands of other people who've also had similar experiences with the tunnel, the light. I'm not a person who studies the Bible. I'm not a person. Everything I live, I experience hands on. I believe in karma. I believe in being a good person, and I believe in me. And where I was the true possibilities that we go on. And am I afraid of crossing over now? If I, you know, the physical part of me doesn't want to leave the family, but the other part of me is like, I know where I'm going, and it's beyond words. That we have simple words. We have a simple perception and perceive things. We're narrowed in the physical world. We're narrowed into a box of our thoughts. We only go in the four corners of, okay, well, this is the way it is. This is the religion I follow. This is my beliefs, and it doesn't work like that. When you leave the body and you cross over to that side, everything is open where you feel the awareness, love, affection, the trueness of everything around you, the grass. And I stick on that grass because I think that from my near-death experiences and when I do these speeches is that we lost touch with reality in a world where everything has become materialistic, and it's the most simple things on the other side that are beyond perfection that you don't need. Now, again, there was more in heaven that I'll get into, but it's just the pureness of what we forgot. So as time went on, I had a hard time. I explained to my parents and friends, my brothers, and I got laughed off. Like no one believed it. It was a hallucination. It was just a bad dream you went into when they were working on you. And, you know, I was allergic. I did find out to the nitrous oxide, and they had to give me IV and prednisone and all these medications to help me breathe again. Not too long after, I remember my backyard, Staten Island, New York, through my mind. I said on a beautiful summer day, I says, through my mind now, I says, God, if I was really at your home, give me a sign because no one believes me. And I'm not sure I believe me. Here comes the chiller to this, is that the next day, my father's at work in Manhattan. My mom says to me and my siblings, let's go for a walk on this beautiful day. And we lived on a long street. We're starting to walk up the street. And all of a sudden, about half a block up, I feel like a vibration energy, like something's on the right side of me. And I slowly turn to the right, and it's this angelic being from heaven, this girl with the long blonde hair and crystal blue eyes. And now she appeared a similar age to me. And I felt this wow, this love, this you came back for me. This is a sign of God. All this is going through my mind now. And I'm saying to my mom, Mom, look, this is what I was telling you about. This is the girl from heaven. And my brothers, and they can't see her. But my older sister did see her. And she's waving to her. And this girl, this is what she looked like. She had on blue jeans. She had a shirt with flowers. These were the flowers I seen in heaven. These were beautiful flowers and imprinted in a shirt that we couldn't even design here. Um, an incredible smile and full of this tremendous energy. And my sister's acknowledging her. I'm excited because I'm like, you can see her, you can see her. And she says now she's not talking verbally, she's talking through the mind. And she says, don't worry, silly. I'm here and I'll be waiting around till you get back. And we keep walking. I'm trying to get my mom's attention. And I'm feeling the pureness and the love of this angelic being. Now, she didn't have wings. She looked just like anybody else, but perfection, beautiful. And then she disappeared as we were walking. And I kept saying to my older sister, where'd she go? Where'd she go? And we're looking around the street, both of us now. Part of me is excited because my sister's seen her. And the other part of me is, well, where is she? Up until this day, in fact, me and my older sister talked about this. You know, all prayers are not answered, and I guess there's reasons for that. And a lot of people lose faith in the physical world of why me and why did this happen and why do I have to deal with so much negative things happening and death around me. I believe that our life is like a puzzle, and every time we move on to the next level, we put a piece of that puzzle together. And I remember when you have that out of body experience or that near death experience, you'll look at that puzzle. Is it completed? Um, some of us come back. Many of us don't come back. And I believe because their puzzle's complete in their own way on this life journey, from the way I understand it, like we cannot accept things of why did my friend die in a car accident? Why did someone I know have a heart attack at such a young age? It's not fair. And it isn't fair. It's not fair. But remember what I said about being in this box of four corners? When you're above and you're out of the box and you look at the whole picture, you understand the fact that there really is no death. Death it's real, but it's not real. It's an illusion that we've created the shell that we're in. We go through this journey and it's up to us to be the best that we can be. And some people have bad journeys and some people have really good journeys. My journey through this near death experience is that believe in prayer, believe in yourself, never ever give up, because the truth is you're meant to keep going on. And if for some strange reason you don't go on because of the acts of whatever, that was meant to be. It's part of the plan that was designed, that you designed before you came into this physical world. It's something that I believe the soul wanted to experience in this particular lifetime. And again, it's hard to accept. I still couldn't accept it if someone I knew crossed over at an early age, even an older age. You don't want to lose anybody. But then when you're on the other side, it's like, wow, okay, I understand now, I get it. And that's what keeps me going on and helping other people, is that restore your faith and believe in you, because you are the light. You are, when I talk about those blades of grass, we're all interconnected energy. And on the other side, because in the physical realm, we're all polluted of everyday life and how we live. And it's about the task and the work and the money. And we forgot through time and time that who we truly are and why we're truly here, the soul's true course of why. I could promise anyone out there that we go on, listen to any near-death experience, there's similarities to my experience. And there's a garden in heaven. So when I talk about the blades of grass, let's put that aside. Let's talk about the garden that I've experienced in heaven. In the garden, every rose, every flower, the flowers imprinted on this angelic being's shirt is euphoric, is a place when you go back to, you're going to be like, this is me, this is who I am. And there's no pain, there's no hatred, there's no anger. It's us, who we truly are, and the nature of us. Miracles do happen. Miracles do happen. A miracle did happen for me when I met this angelic being. And like I said, up till today, we still have conversations, me and my older sister, about who was she. We have ideas of who it could possibly be, but then again, there's no conclusion. So I'll see if you have any questions from that point.
Yeah, thank you. That was so I know you've done this before, because you answered a lot of the questions that I normally ask, which is sort of how do you see things now and how do you understand the world, having had that experience? And you explained it so beautifully. Also, the fact that so many people will say, oh, it's just a chemical reaction, it's a drug reaction. But the people I speak with describe it as realer than this reality. Those blades of grass I feel stuck out for you so much because that was sort of a touchstone of remembering how could I see that so vividly if it wasn't real? Um, I've, in college, I did some drugs, and I've hallucinated. And I know that there's a difference between a hallucination and this is something I know. And so I think you really conveyed that so well. And it's so beautiful. I just got chills too. Um, and for some reason, I kept, when you were describing that girl, I just kept hearing the words periwinkle blue and seeing like flowers held like periwinkle flowers. I was like, I wonder what that, if that has any, what that is, but that's an image that came to me that for some reason just kept floating into my consciousness. But in any case, I just think it's so beautiful that you, yeah, that at such a young age, you were able to absorb these massive concepts. Would you say it took time to sort of, I would assume, process what you experienced? And did it all start to come together more as and unfold more as you grew?
After seeing the angelic being in the physical world, um, I had no more doubt of heaven and the other side, if there was another side. And no one talked about this. There were no TV shows back then in 1981 that talked about this. My aunts, my uncles, no one talked about near-death experiences. Those were called nightmares or dreams, hallucinations. But I knew deep inside of me, I know this is realer than real. Like you said, it's like this is the dream. The physical world
Yeah.
is the dream. That's the real us. And it is. It
Yep.
is. And it's hard for people to grasp until you get there. And you'll see when you get there. When you get home, you'll see.
And I
And
love
it,
that. I love that you say that because it really makes it's very hopeful, and that's part of why I like to do this podcast is to let people know that death is nothing to fear. The pain before the death is not a welcome thing, but I think just to let people know that you'll see when you get there. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to hold on to during, especially during such tough times as we're experiencing now and have in the past as well. Now, after your near death experience, you lived your life. What was your life like? Did you often think about the near death experience? Did you sort of shove it aside and did it pop up later again?
every day,
Mhm.
every day, the mental image of this young angelic being came through my mind every day. And I was a person now as a teenager that I didn't fear. Um, I knew that we go on. I knew that um, this is this life. I don't know how this information was given to me, but I guess when I crossed over that this is a journey that we've chosen. This is an experience that we, these are life lessons going through the whole process of life, going through school and college and working. But the other part of me knew that whenever this stops, because we don't know when our journey stops, right? That side is like bliss, immense. And I will tell people this to listen. I want you to really grasp this part. I promise you, without a shadow of a doubt, those that you have lost, and those that you will see them again. I promise you. And it goes beyond that. You see, it goes, there were people on this other side that I would remember from just being there, like soul family, um, spirit family, like you just know everybody. It's not like I don't know this person. It doesn't work like if you're in a crowd of 100,000 in heaven, it's like, well, who's this? No, no, no. It's an interconnection. Everybody is on that higher vibration, that higher frequency of love. And there's a difference about the word love that we use in the physical world versus the other side. You see, we can say, I love you and mean it to a spouse, to a child, and you mean it and you feel it. That's a simple love. And you feel it. Don't get me wrong, you do feel it, but the real true meaning of love is the acceptance of everything. And now that in the physical world, we cannot accept. And in the physical world now, would have a hard time accepting it. Like if someone did something to one of my children, I can't love them. But when you're outside into this cosmic atmosphere of love, you see it different. You see the whole thing different. This whole vibration is different. And that's the real meaning of love. It's the acceptance of everything, which we don't do here because I can't do here either. It's
Yeah.
just us.
Oh, I love that so much. I was mentally going, okay, this is the part I'm going to save to but the clip I want to put up because I love that. I have never heard it described that way. And I think that's so beautiful that not only is the love there so all encompassing that it's like an unconditional and beyond the love you have for another person or even a child, it's so much bigger than that. But I love that the way you phrase that, that it's the acceptance of everything. It's like being peace with what is. And that's what a lot of us are striving to do here. And it is really hard to do. And of course, none of us are so anti-human that we can just let everything roll off our backs. But I think it's a good thing to at least aim for. And I feel like the closest we can get is to remember those words that you said. I think sometimes we can just remind ourselves when things are tough. This is just an experience. This is just a learning lesson. It's hard. It will work out the way it's supposed to, and it will teach me something. That's hard for people to understand in this world, but it validates what other near-death experiences say and what I now believe. So now my question is, you're a paranormal investigator. How did this come to be? How did your life turn in that direction?
So here's the whole twist of my life. Now, remember I said that I remembered being in a place called hell
Mhm.
through through surplus memory of, was it real? I can't prove it, but it felt real. Um, so now, as I'm going through life, and I had the near death experience, and I know that we go on, and that experience once again is euphoric. I started also seeing shadows later on in my teenage years in my parents' home. Now, the shadows were dark. They were always by the corner of the eye. Um, I would try to talk to my father about it, and he didn't want to hear nothing about it. And it wasn't too far after, like years later, I started to hear voices that came from nowhere. And I wanted to know what it was, curiosity. And now remember, I'm 19 years old, and me and my friends, here we go now. There's light and there's darkness. And I would say follow the light. Of course, we all know that. But darkness also knows how sometimes to reel us in by throwing out that fishing line into our souls and casting us into their direction. Well, that was happening to me now at this point. So we decided to do the Ouija board. Huge mistake, tremendous mistake. We're in the basement of my parents' home, and there was a few friends, and it was my first time, and we'd have our fingers on the planchette, and it's moving slow, and of course we're saying you're moving it, you're moving it. So then we put our fingers on again, and all of a sudden it starts moving counterclockwise, but very, very fast. Like no one could be doing it that fast. Like that was going in a counterclockwise motion in a circle on the Ouija board so fast. And one of my friends started to get sick really quick. And he's like, I got pains in my stomach, I got pain, and we stopped immediately. I felt that there was something else in the room. We all felt like there's something else here. So we let it go. And then remember weeks later, my own curiosity was striking me, and I was doing it by myself to try to get answers of what are these shadows that I'm seeing? What are these voices that I'm hearing? And, having my near-death experience and having memories of a past, you're a lighthouse now in the physical realm. When you're a lighthouse, the spirit world knows, hey, this person is able to communicate with us, whether for good or for bad. We're going to make contact with this person. And what they can do, the negative side is they'll make you open that door that's crack open, wide open, so they all can filter in. And how they do that is through our intent. And my intent was the Ouija board. And I found myself doing it every day by myself, trying to get answers. I was getting a lot of discombobulated letters, and nothing was making sense to me. Maybe it made sense to the other side, but it wasn't formulating into proper words that I would understand anyway, of the English language. But my intent was opening the door of darkness because I wanted to know what was going on. And that's how I was being reeled into this. And as time went on, I felt myself now somehow living both in both worlds of I see the greater of good, and I pulled in some type of negative energy that was trying to contact me from whatever. And I was living with that. And I remember going to a friend's mom. She was a psychic on Staten Island, and she would help find missing children. And I sat in her living room one day, and she said, no, you can't sit there because someone's sitting there. But there was nobody there, but she seen somebody there. So I sat on another chair, and she says, but you don't touch the Ouija board. Let me see what's going on with you. So she's doing it by herself, and I'm observing her, and comes through a past uncle that she don't even know my family. And my Uncle Jerry comes through. He's talking to me through her, not through her voice, but through the board. And she's asked him how he's doing. And it was a conversation. And I'm like, is this really happening right now? And he's giving me messages to give to my aunt before she crosses over, because she's smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And she's, so it was ironic, but yet this medium knew what she was doing. And then she also felt a darkness around me. And she says, be careful. I'm not really sure what's following you, but you have some sort of negative energy around you. And that's how it happened. That's how things started to, I try to walk the straight path, and I was always getting turned and left and right and left and right. And I got into bad things too, living on Staten Island. I was involved with organized crime, and I found myself going in that direction. And I know, like, people listening to this say, well, how could a guy have a near-death experience and now he's so negative and dealing with other things and doing things he shouldn't be doing? Is because there is a dark side too. Whether we want to believe it or we don't, there is. Period. There is. It's how we have to be careful with our intent. If you want to use a Ouija board, it's just a board, but it's the intention. Be careful what you're doing on anything that you want to communicate with the other side. You don't know who you're communicating with sometimes, and you could let that darkness in, and it can become an attachment. And it seek my curiosity of what is it? What else is out there besides my experiences? And are we walking around and there's evil entities around as well that we don't see with the eye, but through the mind's eye and through a form of conscious communication through a vibration when we go into these dream states that I call sometimes night tremors. And then, as I talked about earlier, it felt like sleep paralysis when I was going through that whole thing with the nitrous oxide. Sleep paralysis can be medical. I'm not a doctor, but it also can be supernatural, paranormal, where the other side is coming through. I've had these experiences trying to wake up and I can't wake up. I'm trying to move and toss and turn out of my body. And I felt like I could see, but I can't get myself to wake up. And I can tell people that, again, there are medical conditions that are proven, yes, but there's also acts of evil that can do this to us somehow when we're opened up and they come in through the dream state and through the nightmares to the night tremors. And the night tremors are like when you're waking up with the cold shakes. But before you can get up in a cold wake up, you're in that fighting of sleep paralysis. I need to get up. I need to get up. That is realism. This is real. This is not fake. So I was now being pulled into that world of darkness. It wanted me.
Right. And I I'm trying to formulate the question. I know, like you said, when we're open, one of my teachers, Monica the medium, calls it having the porch light on, where you're saying, hey, spirit can communicate with me, so they know. So that allows us to pick up information from all spirits. And I, what do you think? Some people say burn sage, some people say pray, some people say name of Jesus. Um, I I haven't concerned myself so much with that, but I do always say a prayer before I go into a mediumship reading and before I go into a place that's known to be haunted, which we'll talk about. And I have different ideas about hauntings too, and I'd love to hear yours. But what do you feel? Is there a way to protect yourself? I just ask. I just say, I bring in archangels, I bring in spirit guides. I just say, protect me from any spirit that would wish to do me harm or lead me or lie to me. And I only accept spirits of God's white light. And are there ways that we can protect ourselves against negative entities?
You know, that's a very good question. It's a delicate question. Um, for me, I have to change the channel in my mind, like we change the channel on television. If I'm dealing with a negative experience and there's something around in my mind, I know that I have to change that channel of vibration and get out of this. And how I do that is I'll think of good things, good thoughts. I'll think of, there's a light flickering right now. I don't know if you can
Uh,
see a cast on the
I
shadow.
can. I can.
This is
Is it
ironic.
one of your lamps?
It's a light bulb in the ceiling.
Oh, I noticed it earlier too, and I actually wondered if it was just the flickering of a screen or if there's actually a spirit
I guess
manipulating the
we'll
manipulating
get
the
into that, I guess.
electricity.
Yeah. So so I changed the channel in my mind of good thoughts. You know, one of the biggest takeaways of my near-death experience is that when I go through haunted things and these negative feelings and the shadows, um, I think of good things. I think of heaven. I think of the other side, that grass, the garden, the angelic being, the love, the trueness of us. That gets me through it. That gets me through it. For another person who's dealing with negative energy, this is going to sound maybe crazy, but put on your favorite song right away. Right away. And you can be like, well, what does that do? It changes the frequency and vibration in the mind of push it aside, change that channel, push it aside, and let it go. Let it go and focus on the good music and why you like that song. What does that song remind you of?
Mhm.
Prayers are great. Crystals are incredible. I don't know much about crystals, but I will tell you that having been around so many paranormal investigators throughout my life, some of them have so many crystals that I don't know much about them, but it seems like they work in some sort of sense. I think it's a great thing to study crystals and protect yourself with that as well. Sage, I've had bad experiences with. I personally, it's I don't know. There's a lot of it's good, it's not good. I haven't had good experience. In fact, it backfired sometimes using sage. Sage is good for meditation and things like that, but when you're trying to push something dark out, that backfired on myself and my family. Um, you want to change the intent. When I tell people, like when you go into paranormal investigation, it's like a fireman or a cop. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't. It's exciting. Oh, I'm going to investigate this haunted house or this haunted prison, but you don't know what you're walking into. So the K2 meter goes off, the REM pod goes off. These are simpleton things to me. Um, then you get recordings, maybe an EVP through a digital recorder that you can't debunk. I like that. But don't think for 1 second that it's just there. Because you see, we say, well, the spirit, I'm leaving out the other night and I'll thank you. I've seen so many cases where I get phone calls or emails. Well, why am I being followed? I live 3 states away from somewhere else I investigated. Some of these things, not all the time, but sometimes they can attach themselves. There is no time on the spirit realm. So if you're going to do an investigation, don't provoke. Always talk to the other side with nice words as you would talk to a friend. Um, just want to hear it, investigate and communicate and why you're here and what happened. Try to get that, but never provoke to the point where I don't believe you, blah, 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 because there's no time. You see, you could be 50, 60, 70 years old, and all of a sudden they might come for you. It's on their watch, not ours, when you're going to make that solid communication of, now, do you want to see who I really am? I'm your worst nightmare. These cases, there's a lot of people, and again, I don't like saying this, but it's true. I mean, being in the paranormal for so long, and there's so much death of paranormal investigators, and you know, there's common things of cancer and heart attacks, and there's the common things, but then there's also things that are not coincidences where it wasn't too far after investigating certain locations where I don't know what they did or what decided to follow them. There's no rules for them on the other side. They don't make up the rules. We make up our own rules. Doesn't mean that the other side is going to listen to you. Sometimes you may have good spirits and there's loved ones and they'll communicate with you. But other times I've learned that there's malevolent things that can destroy you. And people say, well, it can't hurt me, it can't touch me. It can, period. It can. I'm a New Yorker. I have debunked everything. I debunked every piece of paranormal equipment ever invented because that's how I am. I got a thick head, and unless an Italian sees it, he don't believe it. Period. That's the old saying: if you don't see it, don't believe it. Right?
Yeah.
It's hearsay. But I could tell the listener this: that I've had my hands-on experience of I don't believe anyone. I don't believe an investigator, up until that day when things did happen to me, and I'm like, well, I guess the investigators and the equipment does work, but I don't really want to believe it. I want to sleep at night, not with one eye open.
Right.
Some of these things will haunt you, taunt you. They'll get you when you don't expect it. That scariness, that I'm here now, that whisper in the ear, and you got to be careful. It could be exciting to be an investigator. Just you're walking on delicate waters
Yeah.
at all costs. It's delicate, and you're not stronger than the other side, period. We have our faith, our love, our trust, and who we believe in, God, but you had an intention to go to that place in the first place, and you have free will. Well, the spirits, they're open to anything that we believe in, and doesn't mean that they're going to listen. If it's a malevolent spirit, and I'll get further when you ask questions, but they can attack.
Right. And my question is, what do you think, or what do you know in your experience, causes what is a malevolent spirit? Are they inherently evil? Are they people who lived here and did negative, horrible things, and therefore they're stuck in sort of a I've always felt that hell is not a place, but a state of mind. So it's where someone goes when they're just not able to get out of that darkness in their consciousness, as opposed to being sent to some place. You did bad things, therefore you're being punished and you're going into this fiery pit. And I'd love to know, do you think is it the balance of evil, good versus evil in the universe, or are there just some spirits that don't sort of I feel like I've from what I've heard, there seem to be tiers sort of in on the other side, where it's not so much you get to go here and you get to go here. It's almost a choice where your soul has a life review and it sort of has the opportunity to say, "Oh, wow, I don't want that anymore. I want to ascend. I want to do better. I want to learn." And then there are those that are just so dark that they stay in this very dark, negative place and they just sort of can't get out of it, for lack of a better term. What's your interpretation of what evil spirits are? Where do they come from? What are
They're
they
demons.
doing? Okay.
In my opinion,
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of opinions and thoughts, and I don't disrespect anyone's beliefs, and
Yeah.
we're all open, but I believe through my experience, they're demons.
Okay.
There are negative people who've crossed over. Um, we have free will, and maybe they didn't want to go to a light, and maybe they didn't want to go to another side through any kind of veil. They wanted to be earthbound. That was proven to me, and I want to talk about this really quick. In the mid '90s, I lost a friend, and before she died. I remember visiting her in Staten Island Hospital, and she's like, the cancer's just eating me up, and she was early 20s, 22, 23, and it consumed her within a year. That was it. So time went on, and I remember with a friend, we went to the cemetery, but the family didn't have a stone because they couldn't afford a stone. So we asked that the office, the little houses that they have in the cemetery, they gave us the direction to go to. But this was interesting. As we're walking, and the cemetery is the Resurrection on Staten Island. It's a huge cemetery. We're walking. There's a gust of wind. Now cemeteries do have wind because they're open. There's nothing there, but the gust of wind was pushing us backwards. And something in my mind is like, keep going against the wind. My friend's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, let's go against the wind. And we're going against the wind, and we see about like for example, a quarter of a mile up, to the right side we see a cross, a wooden cross, and I was like, let's walk to it. And then we see um Hanim, Annette, and then the wind comes full force, and we felt like, okay, she's telling us, because she was strong here in the physical world. She's telling us that's her. Well, here's the good side of the Ouija board. That night, we went on the Ouija board because I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to see if I could communicate with her. And I did. And here's what she told me. I says, Annette, first, I'm so sorry. You died at such a young age, and you have a child that you left here. And, hopefully your mom's watching over her and protecting her. But what's it like? And she says to me, Phil, now the way she was talking and the blanket was moving, it was moving in her. She was Spanish, and she had that way about her, like she would make it move, and the way she would talk with her hand, like express herself. And she goes, the only difference is I walked out of my body. And I says, explain that. She goes, well, I walked out of my body, and I could see you. I could touch you. You might not feel me. I could hear you. I watch over my daughter. And then she said something that was a mind blower to me. She goes, it has to do with the stars. And I asked her, what does that mean? She goes, when the stars are aligned in a certain way, there's some kind of an energy that gives those that have crossed over the power to communicate with us. Some people are superstitious about full moons, but she wasn't talking about the moon. She was talking about the stars. I still today have, I don't study stars, so I don't know much about or astrology where she was going with that, but I guess that the way there's an alignment at certain times, the spirits can come through stronger because they have more energy. And she goes, "I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm just here, and I won't cross over anywhere else until my daughter's time is up because I need to be with her." And she goes, "Do me a favor. Tomorrow, you and Mark, who's my friend, go to the cemetery and bring me a pack of cigarettes because she loved to smoke." So the next day, we went to the cemetery, brought a pack of cigarettes, put on the grave, and all of a sudden the wind comes back. And we knew it was her. We could feel it, but not only feel it, I smelt what she was, this perfume she used to wear the second time we went there. And it was her. Like she wanted us to know this is me. You know, the other side, and I talk about my near death experience, I talk about communicating with a friend and my experience of this out of body and her, what she went through, and she's earthbound. You just walk out of the body. It's as if the body never existed. It's crazy, but it's as if the consciousness made up the body. And it's sort of like the rule of nothing is solid, we're all energy.
Mm-hmm.
We've created ourselves, we've created everything around us to be solid through our thoughts of how we want to see things. And that's the kind of way she was trying to explain it, like, you just walk out of it. It's okay. Walk out of it. And having communicated with her brought me that validation, like not only through my experience, but she won't leave or cross over to any other plane until that her daughter crosses over with her. And the fact that that smell of perfume in the cemetery was another thing that she's saying, "Hey, this is me," and it was her. So we go on. That's the good thing. I went over to know because there's so much death and chaos, and especially today's world, there's so much. Why? I just want to get the weight off my shoulders with everything in the world, but I could promise you, it's like walking out of a shell. It's and then when you do go to where I was, you'll like I said earlier, you'll see when you get there. But that's go to the light. Go to the light. Those that we leave behind are watched over by loved ones. Um, Again, when I was crossed over, I didn't have any recollection of that dentist chair and where I was. And but from what I understand as a paranormal investigator and making communication with so many spirits that have crossed, and again, I debunk a lot of stuff, people. I don't buy into anything, but when you have a digital recorder and you're asking a question and you're getting a voice and a response, an intelligent response to that recorder, that's the sign like, hey, we're not alone.
Yeah.
You can make communication. Um, so it's never lost. That energy of us and that interconnection of loved ones is never truly lost.
Yeah. Um, that's that's so interesting. And I also wanted to know, how did you, I want to talk about your house, but I also want to talk about sort of how did you start doing paranormal investigations? Is it something you did on your own? Did you join forces with somebody? Did you just kind of get equipment and start experimenting with it? I'm interested to hear your
So
experience.
this brings me to the Horsefly Chronicles home.
Yeah.
It's the home I live in. So in 2009, my wife, my family, we were living in another part of Pennsylvania. We wanted to move, and I seen this house listed on a real estate website, and it was beautiful for the price. I'm like, I want to see. I call up the real estate, and they're like, no, sorry, it's on the contract. So then we started looking at other homes, but we really couldn't find anything that we were like grounded to. And I remember working in New Jersey for Cablevision. I was a salesman at the time, and my wife calls me up and she goes, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" She goes, "That house, it's it's still for sale. I talked to a real estate agent. It's out of contract." And I was like, "What?" And I said, "Let's go see this house." Sometimes we don't choose the house chooses us. Beautiful home in a state neighborhood. It's not an old home built in 1996. We move in excited, um, beyond what I thought I could afford, and we loved it. We really loved it. And the first 6 months in the home were ecstatic. Everybody's excited. Everybody has their own big bedroom and all that good stuff. And I remember after that point, after 6 months, I remember I was laying in bed with my wife. I'm like, something's not right here. And she goes, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. I feel like a different, like I have to get out of here and work off the energy that's in this house. And I really can't understand what's going on here. So I joined the gym and I'm going to the gym and I would go back and I would still feel the same way. And I would go to work and talk to coworkers. And I remember somebody saying about feng shui, like maybe the house is off centered the way it was built. And I'm like, okay, I don't know much about that, but maybe it's off centered. It wasn't feeling right. And then 7 to 8 months in, I started to see shadows in the home. And I remember my child, he had a bedroom in the basement. He says, there's toys going off by themselves. Now, the last thing you want to hear working long hours far away is your house is haunted. You made a large investment. It's like, come on, I don't want to hear this. But what was happening was the seed was planted. They knew, meaning the spirits knew, who we were, my family, and here comes the haunting. It's not an old home. It's nothing you look at and say, oh, it doesn't look like that. It's a typical nice house. That's it, period. Um, Now we're dealing with toys going off by themselves, and I'm trying to debunk it, but I can't. Then I'm seeing shadows, and now there's a lot of negative energy in the family. Kids are fighting, and there's friction, and Saturdays were turning out to be the worst day in the home. It was just like this chaos in the home. And every time there was this negative energy and fighting and yelling and arguing over the most simple things, but you don't know they're simple when you're arguing, comes the shadows. And the shadows were getting stronger by more negative energy the family was creating. It's as if we were manifesting something that already was here and making it stronger, but it knew what it was doing. It knew it was a plan, I guess, that it had. And it wasn't up until July of 2013. I get up 5 in the morning for work and I'm in the kitchen. I see this, it looks like the size of a cantaloupe and it's dark, real dark, and it's flying by my eyes. And at first I think it's the bulbs flickering. It's the bulbs, but then it's going into the living room. I'm the only one up. I'm seeing this. I'm like, what am I looking at? Is it a float, like one of those eye floaters in your eye, those dark things that some people get? Is the bulbs? Is it the sun casting in a certain way? What am I looking at here? And it's so quick. I go to work, talk to coworkers, and they're like, this is something else. You got something going on in that house. I'm like, I don't know what it is. And they told me, why don't you contact the paranormal team? And that's what I did. I contacted a paranormal team I seen on television, and they didn't live in Easton. They don't live far away either. I met the owner. He came down here to my home. And it's like, either I'm crazy, we're all hallucinating in this house, or there's something going on here. And I want to know what it is, if you can help us. So he made a plan to come out a week too late, and I canceled the plan. Something just told me cancel it. This is how spirits can manipulate our minds. So then a month later goes by, and more bad things are happening in the home. Now pitches are falling. My walls don't bleed, but when I say pitcher, it fell. It didn't fly across the room. It fell, pitches fell off the wall. I try to put simple explanations behind it. But I did make a resolution to myself, my wife, that let's get this guy here with his team. Let's see what's going on here. If anything he says is nothing, then we got to check for radon gas and gas leaks and have carbon monoxide checked, and we'll do all that stuff if he doesn't pick up on anything. Well, before I even got him to the home, I called the gas company and the electric company, and I wanted to have everything done first before the level of stupid in my mind comes in that there's a ghost in my house. That's how I think, And everything worked out to be fine. They put fans in, they're blowing for carbon and gas leaks, and everything is what it should have been. So it was a Saturday. Here comes the paranormal team, a group of 7 people. In my mind, I'm like, here they come. Laughing to myself, like, one flew over this cuckoo's nest. I don't know whose word, me or them. They have equipment, things I've never seen before, and they go, "You go do your own thing with your family. Let us do our thing." It's like, okay. And a couple hours in, one of their investigators was throwing up on my front lawn. So maybe she drank too much the night before. The other one is screaming her head off in my bathroom, saying her eyes are black. And I'm thinking she takes drugs. This is Phil now. This is the
That's what
Phil
I
app.
would. I'm very logical. I'd be like, I mean, I invited
And
them here, but I take it with a
I go
grain
to
of
the
salt.
investigator, "What's going on?" He goes, "You have something bad in this house." He goes, "This is really bad." And he goes, "Come listen to this." So he plays a recorder, and it wasn't one of those static boxes that you got to try to make out. Like, I don't buy into that stuff. Sorry, I just don't. Like, when you got to
Yeah.
make out what it's saying, to me, just throw it away.
Yeah.
We play the real deal of a digital recorder of you hear a growl. You're hearing growls. I says, well, it's somebody's stomach. Maybe they're hungry. But he goes, you better look at this picture. And he caught a picture of a red orb in the basement. And he goes, you got something bad here. And I don't really know what it is. We want to come back. And, we said our goodbyes. And me, with the thick head I have, I contacted another paranormal team that doesn't even know these people a month later to see if there was any similarity. And sure enough, they came. And I remember their investigator walking through my kitchen, singing Ave Maria, beautiful song. And she gets a scratch in her ankle and she's bleeding. And she's, I think maybe she walked into something. And then the other investigators are experiencing toys going off in the basement. And then on the third floor, there's light bulbs flickering. Now we got something. And then one of their people, he wasn't a psychic, one of the investigators seen the black shadow the size of the cantaloupe, like I seen it fly right across the basement. Now I knew that it wasn't my eyes. Now I knew that someone else said this is real because I didn't tell them about it. And that led me into the venture of I need to learn more. But if I'm going to learn more, I got to get into this field. And in 2014, I started getting into the field of paranormal investigation. I'm investigating my own house. I'm doing it myself now. I have a K2, I have a REM pod, which I really don't believe in
Yeah.
because cable TV makes it go off if you're changing the channel sometimes. And there's energy always floating through certain areas. I was sold on the pictures, and some pictures are optical illusions or matrixing. We try to make out what it really is through our eye, but maybe it's fake. And then you got the recordings that go with the pictures, and then you get the feeling of uneasiness, and then you got the casted shadows. I try to look for 3 or 4 things simultaneously that happen
Yeah.
to say, this is real. This is
Right.
not one little thing going off and I'm buying into this because I'm not. This is 3 to 4 consecutive things simultaneously happening on different floors of the house as I'm asking for communication. Then I got into paranormal investigating my own home. And at the same time, I've had team after team after team come to my home. I've had a total of 52 paranormal teams in 7 years come to my home to investigate, validate, as I'm investigating and validating. And people ask me, do demons exist, Phil? They do. Are you going to see a demon with your eyes? No. What's the difference, people ask me, of a spirit, a good spirit, and a demon being in the home or wherever? Here's the difference. Put your finger in a socket before you plug something in. That electric shock. Now you take that electric shock, but what comes that is the null, the void, the negative energy and hatred and pain, and you just want to burst out of yourself because you hate everything around you. That's the feeling it gives you. It somehow affects our minds like a file cabinet. It can flip through the mind and make you think of the most saddest, hateful times you've lived and experienced. And when you're thinking of that, you're looking at people around you and you're starting to hate them. And you don't know why you're hating them. And you start to build a rage. That's what negative entities, demons do. And they do exist, whether people choose to believe or not. I think maybe it's a good thing not to believe
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes believing gives it that manifestation of life in the physical realm of now and we can communicate. But it is real. total different of communicating with a spirit or a loved one. They'll come by and you'll get the feeling like I got in the cemetery of that perfume or of a song coming on that reminds you of a loved one when you're when you're trying to make that response. Like after you do an investigation and you were thinking about someone who died, a cousin or a friend or a relative, and you play the radio or you're asking Alexa, play the 80s or what the 70s or the 90s, and all of a sudden the song comes on and that song is reminding you of that person, but you can feel that person through the mind. Not that you're seeing them. That's a good spirit. That's a loved one. There's a big difference. A lot of people will never experience negative energy, and that's good. That's a great thing. But they are here, and that's unfortunately what we've experienced in teams around the world. I've challenged everybody in their beliefs. I've had atheists come to my house. I like atheist people because they don't believe in anything. We're born, we're dying, it's over. And I like when they
Mhm.
come because they come here, there's no such thing. Come on, Phil, blah, blah, blah. Then they'll leave here saying, I cannot explain what I've experienced. And I'll leave it like that. It does exist. Um, the supernatural things that we cannot see, whether we tend to believe or not, do exist. Unnatural things, elementals do exist. Now, one of the most ironic pictures that were caught here by a paranormal team in 2017 on the basement floor, coming from where that light was flickering, it's about 3, 4 bulbs down from me, was it looked like, and I have the picture, it's on my Facebook. Uh, it looks like a partial goat coming from the floor. I sent that picture to Dave Schrader. He says, I have chills. I can't keep looking at this picture. I sent that picture to different people in paranormal. It's not an optical illusion because you see the horns. You see it, it looks like a goat with these big eyes, like the head of a goat. So a couple of years ago, we were filming here a show at the house, and one of the film people was standing in that exact spot, and he was going, "Ow, this burns!" And then he grabs his neck, and then we walk to the bathroom, and it looks like a hoof print in the back of his neck. That's also on my Facebook. But he's a non-believer. He doesn't believe in this stuff. He's just here to film. Um, things can happen. Spirits take over certain parts of locations. Why? I still don't know. Why certain areas are more tainted by evilness, not good spirits, evilness. Somehow they've claimed land. You know, one thing about my home, what we did find out is that the Iroquois Indians were between the Forks and Delaware River in eastern Pennsylvania, and they lost the battle. Um, they were lied to with the treaty, and there was a lot of bloodshed here. And there was a lot of young people that used to wear false face masks, the Iroquois, that would try to scare off the rivals. Some of the pictures that we get in the windows of this home are false face. They look like they're someone trying to scare someone off. We're in the focal point of this whole area, this whole neighborhood, and the home happens to sit on whatever. I mean, I don't know. I've had people, some of the top psychics say that there's people buried underneath this house that go way back, way, way back in time, you know, and they don't want you here. But yet they don't, we're called here, but they don't want you here. It's like kind of like we're embedded into this house. I got to say this, and this is confusing when I just said that. It's like we tried to move and sell the home, and then our minds were like, nah, let's just stay. And then we tried years later we don't want to live in a haunting with kids because you know my kid was slapped in the face years ago by something that wasn't seen. He'll still never sleep in that bedroom. There's things that happen here you don't want to live in, but then a part of you say, nah, we'll just stay. That's the entity playing with the mind.
Right.
Um, I believe at one point in time, if my family and I choose strongly enough, we're done, we're out of here, I'd move far away from this house. Unfortunately, I wouldn't want to see another family live here either, but I don't have
Yeah.
that choice because the people I bought the house from were miserable. They didn't look at us at the closing. They just couldn't wait to get rid of the house. They were, and again, it's a nice home, but you would think, why are these people so miserable? And they were broke financially. Spirits and negative energies just don't go after you could see an apparition. You could see a head of a goat. You can hear growls. They go after your medical condition. They will break you down medically, where your stress, your anxiety, your depression's coming out of nowhere. Now you're dealing with medical problems. You're taking medications. Then they'll hit you financially. Well, things will keep breaking on you, and you almost go broke at some points where they try to entrap you into, well, now you're not leaving because you're part of us type of thing. Um, they know how to do that. They know how to manipulate the mind. When we look at these stories of possession, where just an example, and I talk about this because it rings true. Ron DeFeo in the Amityville Horror House, yes, he was on drugs and he was drunk, and then he goes home and kills the family with a shotgun, but the neighbors don't hear a shotgun, and you can hear a shotgun half a mile away if you know a real shotgun sound. Um, the formula of possession before oppression, it all comes to, it can do whatever it wants. It knows you. It knows how to manipulate you because it knows your thoughts. It knows evil knows your weakest link. Every one of us, every one of us, it knows our weakest link. If you have a drug addiction, an alcohol, an abuse, and you have enough intention, or you buy a house, unfortunately, that they know that they're calling you, they'll open up your weaknesses. They'll use your weaknesses against you, but they'll also use you against others. And that's how they conquer. That's how they isolate. That's how they separate you from everybody else. And then no one else believes what you're dealing with. And it has a stronghold on the family. A lot of families, we look at the conjuring home. A lot of families, there's a pattern that negative energies can do. And they want to isolate families, and they take on one person in the family to be not only the leader of chaos, but the chaos person himself, to isolate and try to make everyone filled with the hatred that this thing is feeling. And you don't know it's happening because you're in this cloud of negative energy. So when you ever have a paranormal hangover where you go to a location, you investigate, the next day you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Something just drained
Yes.
all out of
Yeah.
me. Okay, so you know when equipment gets drained, batteries, that one's dead on my camera. Now this battery's dead. It happens all the time during paranormal investigations.
It just happened to me this week.
So what do you think is happening? We're energy.
Yeah.
So now it's taken from us and it's draining us. But now here comes the difference, is that the negative energy will fill that void with it. That's how
Yeah.
that's how it can explain it.
It's so interesting because yesterday I went into a depression and I do not suffer from depression. I'm generally very happy. Not that you have to be all the time. At this phase in my life, I've been happy every day for the last year. I don't feel depression, anxiety every day, but that's always been my state. I went to a paranormal investigation on Saturday night at a Civil War hospital in Virginia, where I now live. And it was a show. It was, you know, some TV people, and it was a lot of people there. Um, and I'm actually going to do some more going back in an intimate setting with just the people from the museum as a medium and with some other, just keep it intimate. I think it'll feel better. And it was one of those things where, as you said, you said it has to be kind of a combination of things, right? So they had all this equipment out, and I felt there's this one room they don't let people into. When you go to the museum, it's this side house that's a kitchen where this man used to live, and he murdered his wife and himself there. Plus, this was a Civil War hospital where people were sometimes piled up. Their bodies were piled up before they died because they just
Yeah.
couldn't treat them all. So they suffer, I mean, terrible, horrible horrors, but also some good spirits there. There were some nuns there that really helped. There were some medical people that really cared. It used to be an old tavern where people had jovial times, but during the Civil War, it turned into a Civil War hospital because it's right on the train tracks. So it was easily accessible. And it's a beautiful little place. I've spent a lot of time there, and I'm going to be spending more. where I feel spirit there, but it's all good. It's like I feel beautiful spirit. I don't feel any fear. Didn't on this night, but they took us into the kitchen house where the people at the museum have said, don't go in there. There's a spirit. He does not want us in there. And he pushes mediums out and he has very bad energy. People have spent the night there and heard all kinds of sounds, some not bad sounds, just music, clinking glasses. And so we went in there. And the minute we went in there, I was sitting with the curator, and she has extensive experience with this spirit because she's there all the time. And she's sitting next to me, and they have all these devices. Now, it it's tough because it was one of those things where you pay $100 a head to go to this thing. And I believe that spirits can communicate through these things. It the the boxes started to respond to questions in a way that was almost like it felt choreographed. Someone walked out and was like, "Yeah, this isn't real." However, I know that whether or not they were just kind of giving the people what they wanted to a degree, I felt, I know that that spirit was there because my scalp was tingling like I felt so much electricity and energy. I wasn't afraid. I was making peace with we were going around there, like, ask a question. And I was like, I'm here as a friend. I know this guy's supposed to be evil, but like I said, with boundaries, like I'm coming here in a sort of a friendly way to say, like, we come in peace kind of thing. But the curator was the one that she's like, he's been following me. He tends to follow me around the museum. And she asked, do you follow me around? And the lights start blinking. Um, I, I don't know that I put a lot of stock into the actual technology, except the EVPs where you can actually hear a voice. Because as you said, a breeze can set them all off. Eh, so I don't know how much I'm really sold on. I think they can work, but there's no way to know if it's spirit or not. But I know that she was freaked out. She's holding my hand, and I was like, I'm feeling so much energy right now, and I'm not afraid, but I'm feeling it. Um, I still don't know, I'm still a little dubious about some of the equipment. But when I left there, I felt fine. I asked if I did a prayer. I did protection prayers before and after. The next few days, I mean, granted, I did get home very late that night. It's out of town for me, but this whole week, so tired, no energy. Suddenly yesterday just fell into this, everything's hard, nothing's working out. And I was like, this is not coming from me. This is not who I am normally. I just suddenly was like, everything's falling apart. Everything's difficult. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be, it was all this negative thought. And I just, thank God, feel better today. But it was like 4 days of a migraine, couldn't get out of bed, could not, never felt so tired. I was like, what is the matter with me? I feel so adrenally drained. So, um, basically just sharing an experience, but also to your point about the equipment, I still don't know what I really think about all that equipment stuff. But I do know that I've heard EVPs from that place that they've taken in the past, and clear as day. One of them is so clear that it's like I was like, wait, that's not a real person. There was no child there. I'm like, who's that little kid singing if there's no kid around? So I think I'm just basically just validating everything that you said, but also kind of, while I'm not afraid, I think, yeah, there is that sense of maybe this is because I attracted that more negative energy by going in there when they say don't go in there, kind of thing. And it's a curiosity because I want to understand, because my understanding has always been that hauntings aren't really hauntings. It's just your loved ones and you're misunderstanding. Like, you're scared because you're seeing things, but actually it's just your loved ones turning the toys on or whatever. But as you said, you knew because you felt the negative energy, that it wasn't just grandma coming to say hi.
Yeah, there's a big difference, and maybe what you went through, you could have been feeling the spirit,
Yeah.
and it was draining you. And if the spirit's depressed, you can become depressed if it has an attachment with you. Um, That's real. That's,
Yeah.
it's as real as the batteries going dead on the cameras you're recording with on an investigation. Um, just because we say leave, goodbye, and don't come home with me,
Right.
I call it the way it is. And I'm buying into that stuff. Sorry, I'm
Right.
not buying into it. And not that they're going to go home with you,
Yeah.
but there are things that do follow. They're called walk-ins, attachments. You know, there's evil. There's evil spirits, and I'm going to go back really quick to this house. First, I debunked everybody, but then, I remember this one person during an investigation. They wanted to be alone, and they left, and then they were in a car accident 2 blocks up from my house. Another person, way back in 2015, has a heart attack. Are these all coincidences? I don't think so. A couple of years ago, we had NESPR here. NESPR is the branch of Ed and Lorraine Warren, Dan Rivera. They have the Annabelle doll. I wanted them to come here because I wanted to see, they're the ones who, the Conjuring, the Annabelle, Amityville, is my house haunted, period. I mean, you guys are the guys. So, and they got the recording. You hear this thing, and I asked them, this is a demon, period. This is it. You can't give it power. You can't give it energy. You can't feed into it. Do we know how to completely fight these things off 100%? If I said yes, I'd be lying. But I say change the channel in the mind and play happy music that reminds you of good times. That's what I do. And I taught people to do that because it does work. You're changing that frequency in the mind, that vibration of, uh, we're doing something different now, music, and get out of that atmosphere. If it's a basement, get out. If it's a house, get out. Go outside, get some fresh air,
That's what
and
I did. Went
and
outside.
use your intentional belief to bring you to the good things in life, the happiness. I always go back when I deal with this haunted house I still live in, and it's still tainted. I go back to heaven, and I put myself there, and I put myself in. Uh, you know, I'm living a haunted life, but I've talked 5 people out of committing suicide in years because they didn't want to deal with life anymore. They felt like they were done. That makes me feel good. That means that my accomplishment of having my experiences, even though I'm going through trials and tribulations in the physical realm, I was able to help 5 other people. And that's a lot to me. It's about helping each other, trust, love, empathy, and being true to yourself, not to the fakeism of you and the mirror that you look in and say, here's my costume and this is who I am. That's not who you are. Look deep inside through a form of meditation. Look at your soul. Look at who you really are. Feel who you really are. And while you're here, and then you're able to help other people going forward because you'll feel that love. That right behind me, love. Not the love of the word we just say and throw out, but the pureness I said in heaven, that word love, that meaning of what we really are, and helping others. And being a paranormal investigation or a psychic or medium, you can help people. Because, we have a lot of things in the physical realm that we try to get through. And I believe that higher vibration of us is that energy that helps others along the path.
I love that. And I think that's actually a perfect place for us to end. But before we end, I would love for, even though I could talk to you for hours and hours, um, I would love for you to share what things you're working on, what kind of services you offer, if you do, what you're writing, what you're working on, just anything you'd like to share, anything at all, even just another thought.
And I'd like to give my email address, PSIRACUSA4 @yahoo.com. If you're a person who you feel lost, you feel like, you know, you're dealing with so much negative energy, send me an email. I help many people and I will communicate with you and give you the best advice I could possibly give. Um, as far as what we have going on, my wife and I have a radio show, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. where we also interview people around the world of their experiences. It's on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, and currently we're working on things in the home. You know, very delicate. We tried, like, we were filmed. We had a reality show that was being filmed here because it was a different twist of a show. Things don't work out the way you plan because you plan for perfection, but when you're living in a real haunted location, nothing works. Um, and nothing works. Whether the internet goes down or people are fighting and arguing, we're still in the mix of everything. And most importantly, besides me, to the listener, I want to make this message: be true to yourself and know that our existence, we don't have a beginning and we don't have an end. And use your positive energy to help others. You be the light in someone else's darkness.
Amen. Especially now. Thank you so much for being here, Phil. Thank you for sharing your insight, your wisdom, your stories, and all of it. I really do think it's so interesting. And I really like to hear different perspectives. I know so many spiritual people will say, oh, there's no darkness. It's all love and light. And I am a very love and light type of person. But I'm so interested to hear other perspectives. And I'm so open to the fact that there's so much I don't know. And the more I speak with different people, the more I learn. And the more I take my own experiences and blend it all together to kind of gain a better understanding of what is going out there in the greater universe and what is this matrix that we live in. And I think this is just fascinating stuff to talk about and to think about. Is this is not all there is. I may not know exactly what it is, but there's so much more going on. And that is why this podcast is called Magic is Real. So thank you so much. It's been so great speaking with you and getting to know you.
Oh, you as well. And I love the title, Magic is Real. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Thank you for having me on your show. And maybe in the future we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Thank you.